Okay, so we have Adobe Premiere open. Premiere is open. We're looking at the assets panel with our project files, the media browser, where we could bring in assets directly onto the timeline or not. But I'm going to bring in my asset from the Finder in this case, or like the file browser. I'm just going to drag in this MP4 here. You could just drag it in directly onto the timeline. That's what I often do if I'm not making a very complicated project. But I could also bring in like a whole folder or something like that.
To be in the timeline and not in the project manager.
I think it's automatically going to be considered an asset, even if it's if it exists in the timeline. It needs to be, considered an asset somewhere. So let's see if I bring it to the timeline. It's gonna require it to be an asset somewhere. Now, once you bring something into the timeline, if you haven't, this is like a sequence, and the sequence has certain settings. And once you bring in some kind of video, the sequence is gonna set its settings, like its pixel dimensions and frame rate and stuff like that, to correspond to the first thing you drag in.
Okay.
So just know that going in, when you start putting in multiple files, and if they have different kind of properties to them, one thing could look right and another thing could look wrong. So I had brought in this puppet animation that I'd made, and it automatically like adjusted the sequence of settings to correspond to those settings. So now when I brought in your video, it says, oh, this clip doesn't match the sequence of settings. Do you want to change the sequence to match these clip settings? And I'll say yes, change sequence settings.
Always say no, because if you don't say no, then there will be another problem.
Yeah,
right
true.
away.
Don't do anything. So now it's actually set up. Your recording is actually in this vertical orientation, which is not standard, but is okay. You should be able to actually upload this to YouTube and have the upload dimensions and presentation correspond to this vertical orientation.
What if I wanted to focus, let's say, on the upper half only as my window? Is there a way to crop?
Yeah, of
crop
course.
A window?
I mean, the first thing is, so what you do is you just go to sequence settings. Let's see what we have by at this point. We have frame size 720 by 1280. So if we wanted to, so this is a good, it's called the 720p. It's like the lowest quality HD format that's standard. If we actually change our settings to be, let's do 1280 by 720, so that it's wide rather than long, but it's going to be bigger than, it's going to be wider than our video is ultimately. So let's do that. All this stuff is, we don't have to worry too much about this, but the pixel aspect ratio will sometimes get you into trouble when you're just dealing with video that's been made in a digital format that's being exported for digital presentation. Usually the pixels will just be square pixels, but if things are kind of coming from broadcast television or something like that, sometimes the pixel dimensions will be different. Or if you're doing a kind of old school camera. Anyway, so there's also the frame rate, which is nothing huge to worry about at this point, but we can get into that if you want. Okay. Changes to preview file format. Okay, yeah. Okay, whatever. So what we have here, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. We have so many windows open that it's hard even to see our screen. So here's where you can zoom. It's only at 25% of the actual window size right now. So here's like 100%. Look at that mean looking.
And I noticed it changed it to a square.
Yeah, it changed it to wide rather than tall. So you could just have made the pixel dimensions just like a small size, so that it just focuses on that part of the frame. But I wanted to just change it to standard dimensions. So I'm going to change it to a standard widescreen HD format. And now that my video is a little too small, so that there's all this like blank space on the sides, I'm just going to enlarge. I'm going to zoom and scale up my video a little bit. So
you changed the horizontal and vertical dimensions. I thought it would just rotate it once to the left or something by doing that. So that's confusing. Because it's not square. The dimensions you put in were the same dimensions, but
reversed. Yeah, that was just arbitrary. What I could have done.
It seems like what happened was not consistent with what you were telling me to do to me.
Okay, so let me just show you what I'm doing. Okay, so right now the dimensions are 1280 tall by 720 wide. If I wanted to just change the dimensions so that it just focused on this top section, I could do this. I could change the dimensions to whatever I want. So I could the width is already 720. I could change it to like another kind of standard could be 540 by 720. So now the height is going to be much shorter, about half.
Show me.
So now okay. So now, and that's just by default focused on the center. It cropped it down so that it's focusing on the center. If you wanted it to focus on the top portion of the video, we can do that too. And I think there's probably an easier way to do it, but the easiest way that I know how to do it is to actually do it as an effect. In After Effects, I could do it just by kind of dragging the footage around, but in Premiere, I don't think you can do that. So it might be the case that we have to go into these effects. Let's see. If I click on my content here, and the content, to select the content, you'll just select it down in the timeline in the sequence itself. Because if you have multiple pieces of content, this panel is going to change in a way that's contextual, responsive to whatever you have selected. So I think the easiest way to do it is you can also do your timer mapping if you want to speed this up here. And this is stuff, it's not the most intuitive, but stuff you'll have to learn. So it looks like automatically I have these video effects. I have this motion, and I can just change the position. And the vertical position, I think it's going to be this one. You can already see I'm just sliding this number down. You could type in a number too. And that's going to just change the position of the video within the frame.
Where did you grab to slide the number down? You just grab the number?
Yeah, just grab the number. You can play with that too.
You're moving it left and right?
Yeah, moving it left and right. So yeah, why don't you try to reposition that? And that's just going to it's going to keep it there. You could also animate this position. You can kind of animate a lot of these things in time if you wanted to just like over time pan around this video. So here you have, see, I'm clicking and dragging over this over the playhead, around where the numbering for the time sequence is to just see it. And you can also just play it in real time by pressing spacebar. And it's not always gonna, it has to compute this. It has to put this into the memory to play it. So it's not always gonna play in real time.
Advanced question. If I wanted it to automatically lock onto an object that's not always centered in the frame, but if I wanted to center like Kiki's head, even though it's jumbling around as I'm moving, is there a way to do that?
I know how to do that in After Effects. There's probably a way to do that in Premiere, but I don't. I'd have to look into that.
What is the effect controls? What file is that under? What folder?
Okay, so there's the effect controls are here. If you wanted to bring up the window, if you close it by accident, this isn't what you're asking, but
okay,
here's all the different panels.
Cool.
Now, if you want to bring up other effects, where are they actually? You can bring them up. I forget what you bring them all up. I think under the effect controls, you can add new. Where do you add new effects? I'm actually forgetting this. Yeah, here, okay, so here's the effects panel actually. So you can actually go from the effects panel. I thought there was an effects menu too, but I guess not. Effects panel to any of these many effects. Now, video effects. Is there something that it's specifically about? There's probably something that's specifically about pinning, marking an area of interest. But you can also do something like, the kind of old school way to do it will be like you just move the position of the frame at different points to just track to the head. But there are ways of where it's we're doing it automatically, where you mark, you kind of it's like when they do CGI filming, people wear the balls or the tape on their on their faces. You can kind of set that up so that it recognizes a certain formation of shapes and color relationships to automatically do. You probably can do it here. I just haven't done it in Premiere.
Okay. Cool.
We can look into that, but yeah, and that's it. And then when you want, you can you can just go. Oh, and also, one thing you also want to do is speed it up. So, time remapping. So the speed, you can take it up from 100% to whatever you want. Speed 100% and more than 100 will speed it up. So that's it, and you'll see that the also here's how you can scroll to a different time if you want to zoom out in the time and see the entire movie at once. You can kind of just drag the end of this bar, zoom in or out. You can cut this up and do your real editing by going into these tools. This is the razor tool. You can cut your video up, and then when you go back to the select tool, you can move it around. You could, and that's and watch out like how the audio and the video overlap one another. So you can just put them on different layers to avoid overlapping. You can do tons of stuff like that, and then just always undo if you did the wrong thing. You can create like smooth transitions, like fades between one clip and another, and that kind of thing. So always save your project and know where your project file is. But then when you're going to export, you're going to export media, and it's going to go right into this the second piece of second application. This is already in Adobe Media Encoder. This is the kind of I don't know if it's going to show that it's open, but by default, it like Adobe Media Encoder, which is a separate program, is already embedded in the Premiere export. So you might be aware that you're exporting from a different piece of software or not. It doesn't matter. But you can change your export settings here. But by default, it's going to send it to an H.264 compressor, and it's going to be an MP4 file, which is a very universal type of compression and a very universal file format. And it's going to export both audio and video, and you can kind of change all these settings. You can see that by default, it matches source with a high bit rate, meaning it'll be pretty high quality. But you can see that the estimated file size is going to be down here. It's estimated that it's going to be 33 megabytes, which is very small. So
too big to email, but still very small.
Yeah, but you can upload it to YouTube, or you can kind of attach it to Google Drive very easily, and then just whenever you're ready, do an export, and
MP4 will load directly to Instagram or Facebook because it's universal. I have a few more questions about sound. Bringing in a sound file, can we do one of those? And
yeah, so should we bring a sound file and just overlay it on this footage?
Yeah, because I haven't worked with MP3s or anything like digital sound files at all.
Should I just grab a random sound, or do you want to?
Just show me kind of like what I'm going to be looking for.
Okay.
I have iTunes, so I have like some tracks on there that I think I'll start with, but I don't know how to like download songs.
As far as downloading songs goes, one thing that people do, there are different ways of downloading like YouTube videos.
Spotify. Yeah.
You have you can't download things from Spotify unless you have. Maybe you can with premium Spotify. Do you have premium Spotify?
No, I don't pay for that shit.
From iTunes, you can either buy or find things. You can download audio files from YouTube. I can show you how to do that. If you look up a song on YouTube, you can download that. You're not supposed to, but you can. So let me see if I can find an MP3 or a WAV file. Oops.
Would iTunes be an MP3 format?
Yeah, or AIFF. Either one. It's gonna whatever the format is. It should work fine in Premiere. So I don't know what these are. What is this?
I'm gonna go throw a log on the fire. Is now a good time?
Yeah.
Pause the recording.
I can stop it. Well, up to